What is going on, my beautiful LARPers and LARPettes? Today we're going to go over the brand new Beretta 92XI, or the 9211. I've been a huge fan of the Beretta 92 series since as long as I can remember. I remember as a kid, I used to play Resident Evil games all the time. I still play them to this day every time they come out. But back in the day, I used to play Resident Evil 1 on the PS1. With my brother all the time, and one of the guns that they had, Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, they had the Beretta 92. And since then I've watched so many action movies and all that stuff, and I always see somebody or some type of character in an action movie that has a Beretta. So they are very iconic firearms, and aside from that, they have also been used by the military and police all over the world. And it's just a iconic gun, guys. Anybody that's into guns know what a Beretta is. But in this video, I'm gonna go over the 92XI and directly compare it to the 92X that you see in front of me here. And I'm basically gonna compare the two so you can see what the main differences are between the new one and the older 92X. But before I get into all that, what is my relationship with Beretta? Now, all the Berettas that you see here, like this 92FS and the 92X, I did purchase myself, but this Beretta 92XI, I did get in from Beretta for free. No payment was involved. Beretta sent me this firearm to do a review on and to show all of my wonderful audience the new hotness, right? So I didn't mention in the beginning of the video that this one here in my hands is the launch edition. So there's basically going to be two variants of the 92XI, which is going to be this one here, and then they're gonna have their standard one, I guess, which is basically just a black slide with a silver frame and a black barrel, I believe. Hopefully I got those colors right. I'll put a picture up somewhere around here. I'm sorry if I didn't get it right, but basically the 92XI is supposed to be the budget-friendly version of the 92X Performance. Now this one here is coming around 1,200 bucks is what I've seen on the website. It's probably going to be a little bit less, but the launch edition, they're only making 1,500 of them, so you're going to have a limited quantity for these here. On the standard version or the black and gray version, it's going to be around $950, but you'll probably find them a little bit less for street price. And throughout the video, I'll throw in little tidbits about the differences between the 92X and the 92X Performance and this one here, just because I don't have a 92X in my hands to compare it to. But the major difference that you're going to see on the 92X compared to this one here is going to be the weight of it, which is, this is an aluminum frame, and on the 92X you get an all steel frame, so that one is a pretty damn heavy gun. This one is not as heavy as the 92X Performance, and the price is going to be the main thing. Even though this one's a limited edition, this is still $300 or $400 cheaper than the 92X Performance. But let's get right into what you're getting when you actually pick one of these up. So you get your typical Beretta hard-sided case, and inside is basically just one magazine. You get one mag in the gun, so 2 magazines total. Just a normal lock and nothing else. Your manuals behind this foam here. But now let's move on to the gun. Starting right at the front here, the barrel is a 4.7-inch barrel, and again, I forget to mention the caliber all the time, or what it's chambered in. This is chambered in a 9mm. But the barrel is essentially identical to the 92X. They are both the same length. I mean, compared to the older 92FSs, you can see that it sticks out a little bit more. I actually prefer these the way they look, a little bit more flush to the slide compared to the older 92FSs. But as far as the barrels go on Berettas, they are extremely accurate. That goes for the across-the-board of Berettas. I have 3 here in front of me. I've owned multiple in the past, and each one of those are tack drivers. And that goes for the XI, guys. They have no problems when it comes to accuracy. I went out and shot a little bit of paper for you guys just because just wanted to mix it up a little bit. I usually shoot steel, but here's some shots on paper, just me trying to get the feel of the trigger, trying to get my follow-up shots, and just seeing how of good groups I can get with certain speeds that I was messing around with. And I also took it out to like 80 or 90 yards and shot like a couple rounds there. Now moving on to the front sight. The front sight on the 92X is different than the 92XI. This is a fiber optic front sight on the 92XI, and on the 92X you just get like this painted orange dot on the front of it. So I do like the fiber a little bit more than that one there, just because in the sun, when the sun reflects off of that fiber, it's super bright when I'm shooting in the daytime. And on the rear, on both of these, they're both basically identical. They're just those serrated, blacked out rear sight. Now on the top of the slides on these two, they do come optics ready, so you can basically just get the corresponding plate for whatever optic you're gonna put on here. Now the slide, you're gonna see a slight difference from the 92XI and the 92X, and that's just going to be the serration. So on the XI, you're going to have basically vertical up and down serrations on the front and the rear of the slide, but on the 92X, they're more at a slight angle. They're kind of canted a little bit on the front and the rear. Now moving on down to the rail, you do get a 1913 rail, accessory rail, light rail, whatever you want to call it. You do have a straight cut on this trigger guard, and on the Beretta 92X it's more rounded off. I actually prefer this design a lot more as well when it comes to that trigger guard. Now moving on back, the takedown lever and the slide stop, slide release is essentially identical to the 92X, but the most important feature is right back here, which is the safety. The safety is now frame mounted, and that is the biggest difference between the 92X and the 92XI, or all the other 92 models for that matter, other than the 92X Performance. But this has been a long time coming. I am so glad, Beretta, I am so glad that you guys are going to frame mounted safeties now. That has been the biggest issue with me and Berettas. I have never been a huge fan of this whole decocker safety lever on top of the slide. I've just always had a problem with racking the slide and me engaging that safety. So every time I would come back and do an overhand rack, I would pop that safety down and it would just be annoying to me. And to add to that, since it's an exposed barrel like this, if I were to try to rack it from the front and say, hey, you know what, it has that problem in the rear, so let me just rack it from the front. If I were to shoot a lot of rounds to this, I would burn the crap out of my hand trying to rack it from the front like I normally do. So bottom line, the only way I was able to actually be comfortable with racking this was just to do an underhand rack like that. And it was just not super consistent for me. I would always kind of like slip or miss that rack. But now with the 92XI, it fixes all of those issues, guys. Well, other than the exposed barrel, but I'm able to now rack it from the back without worrying about hitting that safety or without thinking too hard about how to rack it, you know? So just simple magazine inserted and rack from the top. But the safety is very tactile. It's very easy to put up and down, but you don't have that worry of accidentally pressing that guy down while it's in the holster or however you're gonna have it. Taking this gun out of the holster, which is this Beretta leather holster here that they sent me, was not an issue whatsoever. I'm used to shooting 2011s, guys, so it was second nature for me to activate and deactivate that safety. Now moving on back, you do get a skeletonized hammer on the 92XI here, and you do not have a skeletonized hammer on the 92X here. So that's another small difference. Now moving on down to the grip, this is the Vertec grip, which is essentially the same exact thing that you're getting on the 92X and all your other popular 92 variants, I believe. I think the M9A3 and M9A4 and I don't know what other models have it, but this is a basically common grip that they're coming out with nowadays, and I really like this grip, the straight 1911 style grip compared to the older Beretta grips that had kind of a little hump here. I like this angle a lot more. And for the grip panels, you do get these wooden, beautiful grips from, I believe Hogue makes these. And this is only on the 92XI launch edition. On the normal version, you're only gonna get the plastic grips, kind of like this one here. And like I mentioned in previous videos that I put up, I am a sucker for wooden grips. When Beretta gave me the option of choosing which one I wanted, I love the fact that they are coming out with a wooden wooden grip model. It just gives it that classic look, and it looks beautiful inside of this leather holster as well. Now the mag releases are both essentially identical, and the mag wells are exactly the same as well. Now another big difference between the 92XI and the 92X is going to be the trigger. This is a single action only firearm, and this one here is a double, and then it goes to single when that slide racks back, right? But I want to point out something really cool, which is the trigger shoe itself. It looks like it's a flat face, but it's also curved, so it's like a hybrid between a flat face and a curved trigger. But it is a really nice trigger out of the box. It has a nice and crisp single action pull. And I'm gonna go ahead and put it on the trigger pull gauge for you here. And I think Beretta claims that they're coming around 4.5 pounds, but I think mine's coming out less than that. I don't know if it's because if I shot it or not. So mine's coming around almost 4 pounds. Yeah, I would say 4 pounds. So ½ pound less than what they're saying. Maybe it's because of the way I'm pulling, but I'm gonna show you a little bit closer up right here. Also, I want to mention that I was able to get super quick splits on this trigger, believe it or not. It was a breeze to shoot, guys. I don't know what else to say about the trigger. But other than that, guys, that's pretty much it when it comes to the Beretta 92XI and all the features that it's coming with. But now that I went over everything on the XI here, I do want to point out some issues that arose while I was shooting this. This gun, I only put 700 rounds when I went out there and filmed this video. But within those 700 rounds, there was one issue that popped up and another issue that I noticed when I brought it home. I'm gonna go over the one that I noticed when I got home and started inspecting everything, which is right here on the takedown lever. You can look really closely. I can get, let me see if I can get a good shot for you guys there, but the paint is chipping off of the takedown lever. This gun, I didn't mention it earlier, but this gun is all Cerakoted, and that might just be a defect in the coating process itself, right? I don't have any other wearing issues on the gun itself, and I did shoot quite a few rounds. Usually I would see a little bit more wear on the barrel here or anywhere else on the gun just from me racking it and stuff, but that is the only wear that I saw on this gun, and that is basically just from me disassembling it. It is essentially just that pin that you push across to put that down that is dragging against that takedown lever, and it just scraped off some of the paint there. If I'm not seeing it on the rest of the gun and I'm only seeing it on that part, I'm just going to go ahead and say that the takedown lever on my gun was just not properly coated. But let's just go ahead and say it was a simple coating defect, and that's something that's a super simple fix that they can do from the factory, and who knows, it might just only be mine here. But I would just keep an eye on yours if you do have one, just in case. But moving on to the next issue that I found was on the safety. If you're looking from the top, and I'll put in some closer up shots for you guys here so you can see what I'm looking at. But if you're looking at the top here, there's a roll pin that goes through the left side of the safety. And that roll pin is essentially what holds this safety onto this other part of the safety here, which is basically the safety lever, then a bar that goes across, and that this is just connects to it so that way you can flip it up and down. So while I was shooting, I think I was shooting the plate rack at this time, and this was only about 200 rounds in, 150 to 200 rounds in is when I caught this. So while I was shooting the plate rack, I thought I was having like squib loads or like really weak loads for some reason. So I was shooting and the slide just felt off to me. I shot the 150 rounds and it worked fine. And then within that 150 round, 200 round-ish, I started to feel the slide acting different. It was like vibrating weird. It was a tiny bit sluggish, not too sluggish, but just a little bit sluggish, where I noticed like, hey, this is This is odd. So the first thought in my head was something's going on with my ammo. I stopped shooting. I looked at everything. I inspected it. I'm like, man, I've shot thousands and thousands of rounds of this Fiocchi 115 grain out of multiple guns and never had an issue. Upon further inspection, I saw that the roll pin walked itself out. So when it walked itself out, it would hit the top of the slide here, or the bottom of the slide here on the rails, and it would grind against the slide. So the metal was sticking up and the slide was here, and it was kind of like dragging back and forth every time I was shooting. And that kind of deformed the roll pin just a tad at the tip of the roll pin. So when I noticed that, I was like, oh crap, what's going on here? So I looked at it more. I was like, I think I could push that back in. So all I had on me was just a normal like flathead screwdriver, and I just pressed that down all the way as far as it goes. It even looks a little bit smashed on the top. So I usually do like a 500 round like initial impressions, but since I only got 200 rounds into it, I was like, all right, let me do another 500 rounds and see what happens from here. So I shot 500 more rounds and it worked fine. Within those 500 rounds, it didn't even back out. Even though that's just a little bit weird shaped at the top there, it did not back out within the rest of the 500 rounds that I had, and it worked completely fine. So yeah, within those full 700 rounds, I actually did not have a malfunction. So even though that roll pin walked itself out, it did not hinder this gun from shooting, other than just me feeling that it was a little bit weird when it came to the cycle. My guess is if the roll pin kept walking itself out, it would just keep grinding at the top and kind of getting deformed until it eventually just popped out, and I would probably lose this left side of the safety, or it probably wouldn't have even popped off because I was right on it. So when I came home, I sent Beretta an email. I hopped on a FaceTime call with them, or it's not called FaceTime now, like some type of video call. But I talked to the Beretta team, and they were 100% helpful. They are 100% going to get this squared away. For now, they said if I wanted to send it in and they could just fix everything on it, or I just pretty much told them like, hey, you know what, just send me the roll pin so I could slap that in there and do some more testing, because I don't really care about the paint coming off. I just wanted to address it to you guys that that's something that I found. But the roll pin, I am getting a new one. Beretta is sending me another one in, and I'm just gonna slap that in there and just keep an eye on it and see if it's gonna back out. But Beretta did tell me that this is not a common issue, guys. They have the 92X performances out, and they've had them out for quite a while. And they said that this is very uncommon for something like that to happen out of all the 92X performances that they have out there. But overall, the Beretta customer service is incredible. They listened to the issues that I had here, and they were 100% on top of it and getting everything handled as soon as possible. But out of my testing, that's the only issues that I found with this firearm. Aside from that, guys, from owning all these Berettas here, this is still my favorite Beretta just because it does have a frame-mounted safety. I don't know how long I've been waiting for Berettas to come out with frame-mounted safeties, and they are finally bringing them to market. And this one shoots extremely well, like a Beretta should, and it feels extremely well while I'm shooting it. And I prefer this single action trigger over the double action triggers. It's just a gun that I was able to pick up and do work with, and it was just a super familiar feeling for me. The 92X Performance, I believe I shot the first one when it first came out. My JJ Rakaza, you know him, so he brought one to the range one day, and I shot his, and I absolutely fell in love with it. But it was just extremely heavy for a gun to be carrying around with. That's like a dedicated competition gun, right? And I'm very grateful that they came out with an aluminum version that's cheaper. But there you have it, guys, the Beretta 92XI single action only. What do you think about it? Do you think that this frame-mounted safety is the future of Berettas, and that Beretta should just completely do away with their slide-mounted safety, or do you prefer the slide-mounted safety? I hope Beretta keeps updating the 92 design, just because it's just a nostalgic gun, guys. It's just a gun that I completely fell in love with when I was a kid, and I am still completely in love with now as an adult. And seeing little updates like this just gets me excited for another Beretta to have in my collection. But thank you guys so much for sticking around for this Beretta review. I appreciate you all. Love you all. Catch you in the next one.